Well, welcome, Toy. I'm really glad to have you on the podcast. This is a unique one for us, and this is a special thing for our audience. So will you please let the audience know about your background and what you're doing today?
Thank you so much for having me. So I am a personal branding and image consultant. I have a company that's called The Well-Dressed Brand, and I work with on-air personalities, founders, CEO of companies, really helping them to think about the way that they get dressed and the story that they put out into the world to help them to accomplish more in less time.
Wow. So I'm really interested in what you have to say because, I'm totally clueless in this area. So, I'm wearing this shirt because Jeff told me to wear the shirt. I saw, who's the celebrity chef? Is it Guy Fieri or something
Yes.
like that? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So I saw him on one clip one time. He walked into some kitchen. He was wearing jeans, a white shirt, a dark blazer, and some type of cowboy boots. And I said, I like that look. I'm going to make that my look. That's it. But, I had nobody ever gave me any advice or anything. So I'm probably totally wrong. But, it, so I'm clueless. Where do you start with people? Is it easier with guys versus gals? There's so many nuances to this.
Well, I think that, so I always start with what do you want to say? So at the Well-Dressed Brand, we talk a lot about you dressing the message, right? We want you to dress the way you want to be addressed. So you have to really have clarity, like with anything in branding or business. You want to be very clear on what it is that you want to accomplish and what it is that you want to say. And so once you kind of understand what the narrative is and that you get to control it, then we kind of just go from there. So I usually give my clients a custom made style test that I created. And that's just going to kind of educate them on what their style really is. Whether they are powerful, are they innovative? Do they want to just be comfortable most of the time, but yet polished? So that way I kind of get an idea of what they're buying and why they're buying it. And then from there, I actually use the assessment test by Sally Hogshead from howtofascinate.com. I am a certified fascination advantage coach. And so we take the assessment test, and from that, I merge the two together, and then I create a complete branding deck for each client because we really have to think of ourselves like a product, right? Just like a product, your clothing is your packaging. So you want to make sure that you're pouring into that product, that you're educated on that product, and that the right story is being told about that product. Same as for all of us.
So is kind of an elephant in the room here, kind of an underlying thing is that everybody judges us. It's kind of like, but that first look is so important.
Yeah, I think that we kind of grew up, hearing, you only have one time to make a first impression. I think that that's changed a little bit as we have, as we've kind of gotten a little bit better with our smartphones, and that we can, we don't have the same amount of time that we used to have. I think it was 12 seconds and then it was 10 seconds. The last study I read was, 8 or 9 seconds that you have. So I really kind of steer away from that first impression. I want you to make the right impression. That's more important to me than whatever the first thing people are thinking. I want them to think the right thing about my clients. They should think the right thing about me, that you want them to think the right thing about you. Yeah.
And you make a statement on your website that every style icon is known for something.
Yes.
So talk to me about that.
So if you go back to, I'm a huge, I love old movies, like AMC, Turner Classic Movie, anything that they would typically run on those shows are like my jam, right? And so as you think about, Humphrey Bogart, and you think about, Dorothy Dandridge and all these, amazing people in Hollywood, each of them are known for something, right? And so the same as today, when you look at speakers like Jay Baer, he's an excellent example of someone who uses his wardrobe as a business strategy or as a speaker strategy, or even, in his book, Talk Triggers, his wardrobe has become even a talk trigger. And so it's really about having this signature style style, being known for something. And so I had a client a few years ago reach out to me because her daughter was graduating college and she was starting her first job at this firm in New York. And, I took a look at some of her pictures and I said, you don't really need to hire me. I mean, I'll take your money, but I mean, if you really want me to have it, but it's not necessary. So I said, here are some, here's, some things that she really just needs to do. I said I would just update her hairstyle and then she needs to figure out what she's going to be known for. So what I will allow you to do is just like pay me for like a consultation because she didn't need a lot of help. And so we talked a couple months later and probably about a year later, really, she was being promoted and she was known for the girl in the office that just, had exceptional style, but everyone was always talking about her shoes. And so, I think she's, got promoted a few more times since that. So you have to be exceptional when you show up every day, but you also want to be known for something. Like people want to know what to expect when you show up. So.
It's funny you say that because I remember seeing Simon Sinek speak a few years ago, and he had orange socks on. And I just could not, that came up multiple times during the talk. Not he brought it up, but just my
Yeah.
attention was just like orange socks. I wonder why he chose orange socks. It's like, there's some statement there. There's something he's trying to communicate.
Well, and you're still talking about it, right? And so as you start to break down the colors of psychology, and I talk about, what different colors say to the world in my current book, Secrets of a Well-Dressed Brand. So let's look at orange. So orange is the color of adventure and creativity. It's about forward thinking. And when you think about the work that Simon Sinek has done, and how we all are just really really inhaling his content constantly. Orange speaks to that. He's enthusiastic, he's a risk taker, he's informal, he's an extrovert. Those are all the things that the color orange represents. And so the fact that number one, we're still talking about it, and number two, it was something that quietly fit into his brand. And like it was working, like it did all the things. And those are the type of things that I help my clients to do. Like that's what we talk about. Is you want to kind of have, it's like quiet fire, right? You want to have that statement that you're known for and keep people talking. I love that.
Yeah, I mean it's odd, but it is just the way things actually work. So we can't fight it. But so who do you find is easier to work with, men or women, and why?
Well, I think that men have less choices. You guys don't have to worry about, I mean, you have, for the most part, you have pants and you have a top. You're going to put on a shirt. You get to decide, okay, button down, pull over. You just don't have that many choices. Or, a suit is probably the easiest thing. A lot of men, which I absolutely detest, khakis. I hate khakis. I hate to use the word hate, but I want to set them all on fire. Like all of the khakis in the world, the color like I think that men should just stop wearing khakis. So anyway, because I just think you need to move on from it and do something else. But you have a uniform and it's very easy for the most part to get dressed. And so as long as you have a really good pair of shoes and decide what's your signature going to be. Is it a watch? Is it cufflinks? Is it, you're always going to wear a navy jacket, like whatever it is, it's pretty straightforward. Women, we have a lot more decisions to make. And so therefore that opens us up to make a lot more, to have a lot more struggles and to make the wrong decisions a lot often. So that's the struggle. You guys can just get up and get dressed in 10 minutes and we're just like, what shoes, which skirt length, which top, print or no print? Do I put a layer on it? Do I need a layer underneath? Do I need to put shapewear on? How about my foundations? And then we have to move on to hair and makeup. Oh my word. It's so much. It's so much. It is so much.
And what about your cars? I mean, the car says something about it. Do you go beyond it? Do you talk about other stuff? I mean, whether it's their notebook or...
Yeah, I do. I haven't gone to cars, but that might be something. I think that, yeah, of course, you want to make sure that, again, if you're thinking about yourself as a product and everything else is an extension of that, then, it's really about the total package. And what I
Yeah.
try to get people to understand. And so right now I'm writing my second book about, using your wardrobe as a business strategy, because we really aren't talking about fluffy fashion, you know. This is serious, and it's something that when you look at Ralph Lauren and you look at Chanel, they were really able to control the narrative in their lives. So yes, I think the car matters, the pen you use matters, the notebook that you carry matters. It's all encompassing, you know.
Yeah, it's challenging for somebody like me, so who just doesn't. I mean, I realize other people notice my shoes. For me, I'm just thinking, what shoes do I want to wear today? It's comfortable, right? So, but I whether it's my 13-year-old daughter or whether it's other people I've worked with in business. I mean, there was a guy in Thomasville, Georgia, great
Yeah.
guy, one of my clients, and I walked in. He goes, "Wow, those are nice shoes." I'm just like, "Yeah, my wife chose them for me. She liked them." Yeah, that's how. Yeah. So for somebody like me, or actually, hopefully, there's not many people that are this dysfunctional when it comes to style. Um, Talk to me about how your book is organized and how that's going to help someone as clueless as someone who will remain unnamed who's on this podcast, and or better, really start to understand, oh, this is what you can do and this is what you can think about and that type of thing.
Well, so I remember when I was writing my first book, I kept reading that people buy books but they don't read them. And I thought, well, that's unfortunate because, I spent my career, I spent 16 years as a style director at QVC, dressing all 30 program hosts. I was part of the image department, and part of that team. And so I learned a lot of things while I worked there. And then prior to that, I worked at a lot of different retailers. I did the executive training program at Bloomingdale's in New York, where I ran a $15 million business there. And so I had a lot of knowledge, to kind of pour into a book. And so I was looking at this whole 10,000 hours, right, to be an expert. And I put the number in my book because I don't know what it is now, but I was like 170,000 hours that I had really spent kind of honing this craft. And I was like, if I write a book, I want you to read it. So I decided to do an interactive ebook. And so I'm going to be completely transparent. It's only sold on iTunes because there is not a hard copy, because I know that we spend so much time on our tablets and our phones. So I wanted to be sensitive to that. It takes about an hour and a half to get through. That again was intentional because I wanted to be sensitive to the fact that we're laying in bed at night, usually around 9 or 10 o'clock, and we start getting on social media or just reading something to fall asleep. If you do 30 minutes a night, you can start it on Monday and you're finished by Wednesday, and dressing better by Thursday. Um, so that was intentional as well. And so it's text, obviously, because it's a book, but then I'm interviewing some celebrity stylist friends of mine who run a fashion firm and interior design firm in New York. I interview the CEO of Big Brother and Big Sister here in Philadelphia to talk about nonprofit and what that looks like when you're hiring people. What does that look like for you when you're building a personal brand? And then I also interview the CEO of the Kimmel Center here, which is our largest performing arts center where we go to watch, plays and all different kinds of things. So I hit the creative space. I hit a bunch of different things so that it's something for men and it's something for women. And then I take it a step further and I explain what's the difference between a look and an outfit. What's the difference between a stylist and an image consultant? What colors should you start with if you're on camera? What things you need to have in your closet? Why do you need to increase your prices if you are really considering a brand? What kind of brand are you? Like, there's a lot of information in this book. Are you a Walmart? Are you a Target? Are you a Neiman Marcus? Are you Nordstrom's? And set your prices accordingly. And so I cover all of those things in the book for 30 minutes a night.
I like it. I like it. You get through a book in an hour and a half, and it's that comprehensive and it's interactive. I mean, it sounds awesome.
It's fun. It's fun. And so my favorite thing about the book so far, regarding, a male client was I call him my accidental client because I took it off. I just redid my website, but I had on my old website, I had a phone number. No one ever calls, but I was just like, I just have a phone number on there just in case. And so I had this phone number on there, and I get this call, and I had this deep Tennessee accent, and a gentleman. I'm going to say his name because I know he wouldn't mind me telling the story because he left a review on the book. Justin Cruz is his name. And he calls me, he leaves me this voicemail, and he's like, listen, I just heard you on this podcast. And he's like, I don't know if I'm buying it. I don't know if I understand it. I don't think, I just don't know if I believe it. Can you give me a call back? And I said, okay. All right. So I call him and we talk through. He's just like, I don't, and it was such a beautiful challenge because he doesn't wear jeans. And I was like, what do you mean you don't wear jeans? Like everybody wears jeans. He's like, I do not wear jeans. I think that they're really uncomfortable. I don't wear them. And I'm like, oh, he goes, no, by the way, my son, he doesn't wear jeans either. Like we just don't like them. So I said, well, what are you wearing? And he's like, I wear khakis. No. No, that scene from Mommy Dearest when she holds up the hanger.
Yeah.
No more wire hanger. So I'm like, Jason Cruz, you will stop wearing khakis. So I said, okay, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to allow you to keep wearing khakis, but you will not wear the actual color khaki of khakis. Okay? He's like, okay, I'm listening. So I said, I want you to go out and I want you to get navy. I want you to get olive green. And what other color do we get? I forget what other color that we get. I said, so those are going to, and black. I said, and then those are going to replace, whatever. Because I'm sure there's most of the things in your wardrobe are going to work with those colors. Okay. And I said, okay, so the look we're going to go for is Southern Gentleman. He's like, oh, okay. And he showed me a couple of the jackets and, he likes to wear hats and things like that. So I put it all together for him, put together a branding book for him. I said, here's what I want you to look like when you're coaching. Here's what I want you to look like when you're going out to all these speaking gigs, when you're on your television show, when you're on your YouTube channel. Like, here are the things that I want you to look like. So he's like, okay. So we do that. So he calls me back a couple weeks later and he says his wife was like, you look really nice. And he said, thank you. She's like, where are you going? So he tells her, she said, well, how did you know to do that? And he said, I had help. And she said, who helped you? Like, Sweeney, who is that? Tell her I said thank you. So that was yeah. So I think that I just love that story, and I just love that because I'd never really come across a man who didn't wear jeans before, but it was fun and it worked out. So it was really about that was interesting. Again, going back to we get to control the narrative and what people say, but if you have things like that, well, I don't wear sneakers, well, I don't wear this, and so you may not just know how to do it. So that's where I come in.
Yeah, so I'm also kind of curious, does the style that you create or, give to somebody, how does that transition when you go from, okay, well, here's where I go to my daily work, here's where like you mentioned, this guy has a TV show, or here's where I am, I'm doing a keynote, or here I'm on a podcast, or something more simple, here I'm going out to dinner with friends, or here I'm just, this is just hangout stuff.
Yeah.
How do you transition that through there? Or is there a point it stops where it's like, okay, when you're going to be in your backyard, you get freedom, you can wear whatever you want? I mean,
yes, because I think that he's in ministry, so he's speaking, he's building. I think he has like a leader. He's a good example of what we're talking about because he's in like a leadership. He builds a leadership program around hunting. So if he doesn't wear jeans, again, I would imagine that on his YouTube channel, if we went to check, he probably is still wearing khakis, but that makes sense for that. I would allow him to wear if he's hunting, but
I always think of jeans for hunting. I never would think of being in khakis for hunting.
Not wear jeans. He doesn't wear jeans for anything.
Oh, okay.
So I think that, yes, to your point is that, it's not about being fancy. It's not about being dressed up. Like I said, most people wear jeans And so it's just maybe a good example would be, so if you're barbecuing, you know, if you're comfortable in shorts, then wear shorts. If it's not so much about the specific item. Again, it's about the overall look. When you think about designers, each of them have a very specific look. You know what to expect when you're shopping with Ralph Lauren. If you walk into a Chanel or Gucci boutique, you know what to expect. The same that you expect when you go into Target versus Nordstrom's or Neiman's. And so there's an expectation before we kind of walk in the door. And so the same is with us, that people should be able to have an expectation of what they're going to see. When you show up, I look a little different today than I would look if I was on stage. So I'm not like super fancy. Probably have a lot less makeup on than I typically would, because I'm in my home office, I'm in my home studio. And so it's a little bit different than when I go on stage or if I'm meeting with a client, like that. So I think that you, like with anything, right, you have your overarching brand, but then there's different levels to it and you ramp it up or you ramp it down, if you're going to your kid's school or if you're cupcake mom or you're picking them up in line versus doing a keynote or something like that.
Yeah, and are there many people that you run into where your work actually creates time savings because they wake up in the morning and they just don't, it takes them 5, 10, 15, 30 minutes to figure out even what they're going to wear?
Yeah. Yes, and I talk a lot about that. So when you really have, your personal brand down, especially from the image perspective, and you set your closet up so that it's a branded closet, meaning that we've decided that here are 20 colors that probably look really good on you. But out of that 20, we're going to narrow them down to like 6 or 7. And those are the only 6 or 7, things that you're going to have in your closet. And so that makes it easier. And so if we know that your signature thing is, for a guy, if it's watches or shoes or, whatever, then we make sure that you have those items so that when you get up in the morning, it kind of becomes habitual, right? You're like dark denim jeans, button down shirt, navy blazer, this watch, those shoes, done. If you oversleep, which, high performers don't typically, but it can happen. You can get dressed in less than 5 minutes and you're not spending all this time searching because you kind of know what you need to look like at all times. And I give my clients like a digital roadmap and also a hard copy. So you can hang it up in your closet if you need it to have it. So like, okay, if you're out shopping, you pull out your phone and you're like, oh, this kind of looks like the shirt that she puts on, in my branding deck. So this should be okay.
Yeah. So do you find that, and for me, by the way, I just, to avoid that confusion in the morning, I figure it out the night before what
Yeah.
I'm doing. So I can walk in and just not even think about it, change. But I'm curious, when you actually get to go on site, which I know isn't all the time for you, but when you get to go on site, quote unquote, and go into somebody's closet, do you find that there's a certain percentage, and I'm curious how big of a percentage of clothes that are like, yeah, get rid of this, it gone, and there's almost kind of a, not to this extreme, but almost like a minimalist approach, if I'm understanding you right. So the only things you have left in your closet is what works for you.
Yes. And so I don't, so I will shop with people. So what we do is we have a consultation. I put the branding deck together and then we kind of fill in the holes of what you need. Like I'll say, okay, based on that, send me pictures, or I'll show up like, send me pictures of this. And then the only time that I really show up is to shop. Because as far as setting up their closet and then cleaning out their closet, that's not something that I want to do. Excuse me. Just because, no, I know it's not that I don't want to do it. It's just that at this stage and at this age in my career, I've so past that point. And for what I charge hourly, if you want to pay me that amount of money to clean out your closet again, I will do it. But I'm, I'm going to say no first. And if you insist, then I'm like, okay.
Well, I would think you'd be able to figure it out based on what you've given them.
Yeah. And
Should be
so
pretty straightforward.
yeah, and it doesn't, but I said it would just be an insane amount for that task. Because what I offer and what I do is so much more than that. And so I haven't cleaned out a closet in years, but we FaceTime and then they, but after you get your branding deck, it's very clear what you need to throw out,
Yeah.
because they can't even look at it the same. And so, and so I don't usually have to say much outside of like, why did you I just had someone reach out to me the other day and was saying, I'm saving so much time and so much money now that I just know what to do. And so, they just started removing things on their own. So I get voicemails and pictures all the time of like, here's all this stuff that I'm donating. I'm just getting these colors. And so for the most part, people are kind of they're in the right kind of realm of what they need to be doing. I just was working with somebody the other day and her clothes were fine, but they were just fine. So as long as she wants to operate in the level of fine, it was okay. Her hair and her makeup were the bigger issue for me. And so she was like, well,
Yeah.
these are the kind of dresses and the things I like to shop. And I was like, I said it very kindly, but I was like, well, that's ridiculous. Like, you should not be wearing that. I was like, I don't know why it looks like a costume, I don't know why you're wearing that. And she's like, but I'm honest. And so I was like, why would you are a millionaire. Why are we doing this? And so, she's like, no, I know that you're right. And so I just kind of gave her again some images so that we got the same effect because she was after a certain look and a certain story, right? So we can do that and streamline it and make it look more relevant
Yeah.
and less trendy. So that's what I do. Yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of brings back to, I think, one of the points you've got on your website that's a big point where you say something like, it's got to be you. Or, really you're trying to make them look like you. And I think we need to bring it back to that because I
Yeah.
don't want people misunderstanding what you're saying
Yeah.
and thinking it's a costume or thinking that you want to dress like somebody else. It sounds like part of your message is to get people comfortable with themselves and
Well,
then communicating that.
yes, that's exactly what the message is. But then we take that information, and what I do is I level it up, So, she's an exceptional person. She's brilliant. And so I said, honestly, I joke and I did tell her it looked like a costume, but I'm like, but here's how we can make that work. Couple it with this, bring up the hemline a little bit, pair it with this shoe instead of that, just so that it looks more elevated. And so that was real. It was a small tweak. And, again, I just said, my bigger concern is when was the last time you updated your glasses? When was the last time you got a new haircut? When was the last time you colored your hair? Like those types of things for this specific person, that was what we needed to address. And so again, I always start with who are you? So let's look at, how is the world seeing you already? And so that's how I use the fascination advantage. And then we do the style test. So it's like, okay, here's what you've been buying. And if it's, whatever. So that's when I know why you like the things that you like. And I go, okay, I'm going to mix them together and then we're going to level it up so that you have a very specific signature style that only belongs to you. And it's subtle enough that it's not like you're walking in to a family gathering or to work or to a meeting or a keynote and you look completely different. You look like yourself, but better. You know?
Yeah. And one thought just occurred to me. Do you find that some of your clients actually use this information not only for themselves, but then they bring you back stories on how, I met this person and I realized based on what you taught me, Toy, that, they were trying to get across this message, maybe poorly, maybe well. But they got a glimpse of something that was not, um, that the person maybe wasn't trying to reveal, but trying to,
Yeah.
maybe something real about the person, maybe something not real about the person that they caught because of what you taught them.
Um, I don't know if I've had that. I think that they use it, to your point, more with, like, oh, and then I said this to my husband, and I told him, or or my daughter, and they'll kind of pass, a spouse along, or or something like that. Or I did, I worked with one person, and then they ended up hiring me to do the oh my gosh, what is it called, your for your company? My mind just went completely blank. What is it called? Your dress code. There we go. It came
Oh,
back.
dress code. Okay, there we go. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I did the dress code for Story Brand. And so
Oh, Donald Miller. He's great.
yes. And so after I did the podcast and did all that stuff, then I ended up, rolling out a dress code for their entire company. And so I think that it's what you're saying, but it's just a little bit more subtle, maybe. The bigger thing that I run into is people don't really want to change. People say that they want to change, but they don't really want to change. So sometimes I will
Yeah.
get resistance. And I'm not, I'll say what I'm saying because you are hiring me as the expert, but sometimes I have to just let them see. And so I just had this recently with a client, and and it's happened a few times in my career where they'll come back and say, you were right. I showed up and this, that, and the third happened, or this person was wearing that. And I'm so glad that I did listen to you. So that happens a lot. My biggest one was I was working with two influencers years ago, when the Live Well Network was still on television, and they had gotten invited to speak at this conference, I think for Pinterest or something. And they were just, I was like, I don't want you guys to do this, because at that time, like, bubble necklaces, were really like a big thing. And I said, you're going to show up and there's going to be a sea of bubble necklaces. And this one particular one of the two, she was very resistant. And so I said, instead, I'm going to show you how to tie your scarf so that it looks like a statement necklace, so that you're wearing a statement necklace, just like what the trend is, but it's going to be actually a scarf. And so it was like, so we went through all of her outfits. This is when I was still doing closets.
Oh, okay, okay.
I went in and I lined up all the outfits for each closet day and tied a scarf around each one. And so she comes back from the conference and she said, oh my word, I showed up and it was a sea of bubble necklaces. I wanted to throw up. There were so many bubble necklaces. I was like, I told you. And she said, and everyone kept coming up to me and saying, like, oh, is that a scarf that you have on? How did you do that? Can you show me how to do it? So I find that happens a lot.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. So, with what you're doing now, you say you're working on your second book,
Yes.
and I'm curious, where are you going next? Because this sounds fascinating.
So this one is kind of like part two of the first one. I'll incorporate enough of the first, so in case you didn't get a chance to pick it up, or if you're an Android user, you kind of are caught up to speed. But this is really more about how do you really use your wardrobe as a business strategy, as you're speaking, as you're going through the different phases of your business. Why does it really matter? And so I think this one will have a lot more of studies in it, as well. The first one does. The current one right now has studies in it, of course. I need to back up what I'm saying to you, but we go a little bit deeper. We go a little bit deeper. There's one that came out in December from Princeton University, where they're talking about how your wardrobe, like, people are deciding if they think you're competent.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's just really speaking to all of those things, and just talking about, and I talk about this in the first book, that it really isn't fluffy fashion. It's not about looking great. It's really more about the impact that you want to have, because especially as we're moving into, an age where everything is about video, right? So what does that need to look like? How do you need to dress for that? What colors are going to look better on camera? When we're talking about that, I had a CEO ask me once, which was a great question, when you need to deliver news to the company, and and it's, you don't want to, it's not great news. How do I dress for that? you know And so I'm just going to kind of go through all of those different things.
So I'm kind of curious, and I know you're tight on time here, so maybe this may be a good place to cruise towards the end. Although I don't want to end there because I do want to ask you one more question.
Ask me
But
something.
are what three people
Yes.
have not engaged with you, can be at least one of them has to be famous so people in the audience know, that really should engage with you because you could help them out?
Oh, oh, see, that's tough though. Um, it's tough only because not that because I don't want to say I don't know because it's style and personal branding go hand in hand, and it's so personal, right? And so, like the other day, I was looking at Kelly Clarkson, and I was like, "Oh man, I wish I can get my hands on Kelly Clarkson," you know. And then she had posted this outfit, and I was like, "Oh man!" And she tagged her stylist, and so I went to her stylist page, and I was like, "Oh, you know," because it really sometimes isn't about them; it's really about the stylist dressing your client right the way you like to dress, as opposed to dressing them for what their goals are. And so it's just different. What I do is very different. And it's very difficult to communicate that because, again, when you're looking at what I'm doing, it looks really quickly like what everybody else is doing, but it's so much deeper. And so, but as I started to listen to Kelly talk about, she likes different things and she likes that, then she's dressing her the way her and Kelly had agreed that that's what she wants to look like, you know? So I would just come in and just give her a different perspective and do it based on where she wants to go. I would love to work with Gwen Stefani because not dressing her because she's perfect, but I think that just from watching her on The Voice, no one understands branding from an image perspective the way that Gwen Stefani does. I just think that she nails it 1,000% when she talks about it. There's a scene on The Voice where she goes through this girl's perform. Like, this is what I do. She's looking at her performance and the song that she's going to sing, and she has it down to the metal of the earrings. And I'm like, yes, because every little thing communicates your story, you know? So it really is about, you know, the narrative. It's not really about the fashion. And so I think that that's why that question is hard to answer, but that's
But
what
you gave two great answers, so that was great, and it was interesting that the answers you gave. One person is, "Hey, I'd provide a different perspective," which is very humble, and the other one is, with Gwen Stefani, it's out of tremendous respect for how she's nailing it, and just be interesting to collaborate with her versus, hey, here's someone else who's doing something that, I mean, my credit to you for your grace and humility that you didn't like be so judgmental to pick somebody out saying this person's really not doing it right. And world would be a different place if more people approach life that way. So thanks, Toy. That was great. So in closing, typical question is like, hey, you've given some awesome input today. Even me, I don't even think you can call me like a design branding, neophyte. I'm just clueless, Captain Clueless here. I gained a lot of thoughts, and I want to get your book. I mean, not only for the insights, but Mr. Practical here, you tell me it's an hour and a half and I get through it and I'll actually learn something. I'm like, I'm all in. That's great. So what would be like a closing challenge or thought or something that, also if you want, I want to make certain people know how to connect with you because it's not in our plans right now, but I can tell you sincerely that I do want to come back and go through this process with you. I think this would be fascinating.
No,
Maybe.
it's really fun, you know, and I think that people do leave and they have a bunch of kind of light bulb moments. I think that again, what I do that's very different is just helping you to really curate and control the narrative. So the first thing that I would challenge everyone to do is really decide what you want to say. And what I mean by that is this is the first question that I ask every single client is when you walk in the room or you hit that stage, what do you want the audience to think and feel about you? What is that immediate like that you when you hit the stage, right? Or when you come on camera for the first time, like what do you want them to think or feel about you? And write that down. And then once you kind of understand that, then we decide what that looks like. So, what does that look like? So, even in my book, I go through color. So, if you're somebody that wears a lot of black, black is the color of authority and power and sophistication and confidence. Red is a very complicated color, and so it means some men read it differently than women. So you kind of then we go through that. So
Yeah, but that red looks great on you on that dress that's in the background there.
that's on
Yeah,
everything.
it's on your website. Yeah, you look great in that dress. It's awesome.
Well, I love red because it is a very controversial color, and but it really speaks to who I am. So my brand colors make sense for the story that I want to tell. I'm either in black or I'm in red or I'm in ivory. I do play with other colors, but when I'm speaking or doing things like that, those are the colors that I'm typically in. So yeah, so I think that you have to just think about again exactly what we just talked about. What do you want to say? What do you want people to think about you? What are you trying to accomplish? Take a look at your calendar because it may change on that day. If I'm going to go do a benefit at the children's hospital, then that might not be the day that I want to wear red. I don't want to wear black, and I may not want to wear ivory. I just did a cancer benefit last year, and you want to be mindful of that too. So I would say, what do you want to say? Then look at your calendar, who you're meeting with that day, and then dress the way that you want to be addressed. That's the biggest thing.
Awesome, awesome. And so, although we're going to have it on the blog site, or excuse me, the podcast site, how can people get a hold of you?
You can go to toysweeney.com. I am Toy Sweeney everywhere. T as in Tom, OI, Sweeney, Sweeney. There's three E's because my Irish husband's family thought that two E's were not enough. So I am Toy Sweeney everywhere, except for on Twitter where I'm Sweeney Toy. I don't know why. I just am.
Well, it's been great to have you on, and you have converted me. I definitely want to do this in the future, near future, I hope. So, thank you very much. I'm sure our audience is going to love this podcast.
Thank you so much for having me on.